The Pacific Ocean stretched out before them, an endless sapphire canvas beneath the setting sun. The enormous cruise ship, the icon of the seas, the world's largest cruise ship, cut through the waves with an effortless grace. On board, passengers basked in the lap of luxury, oblivious to the sinister currents stirring beneath the surface.
This is perfect, Kimmy, just what we needed.
Ben and Kimmy, celebrating their 5th anniversary, felt the magic of the voyage. They strolled hand in hand on the deck. The salt-kissed breeze whipped through their hair. Laughter came easily as they soaked in the breathtaking panorama. But the vastness of the ocean held a certain mystique. It was a world of hidden depths, where secrets could be lost and darkness could thrive unseen. The grand dining room buzzed with conversation and the clinking of silverware. Couples whispered sweet nothings, families shared stories of their day's adventures. At a table by the panoramic window, Ben savored a perfectly cooked steak. It was the main course of a sumptuous meal. He raised his glass of wine to Kimmy, his eyes sparkling with love and contentment.
To us, my love, here's to many more years of happiness.
The ship, a world unto itself, promised endless possibilities, but fate, it seemed, had a different plan. A sharp, searing pain erupted in Ben's chest. The steak, lodged firmly in his throat, refused to budge. He gasped for air, his face turning a terrifying shade of purple. Panic seized him, the edges of his vision blurring.
Ben, oh my God, Ben!
Kimmy, her eyes widening in horror, called out his name. Her voice was lost in the cacophony of the dining room. Diners looked on, a mixture of curiosity and concern etched on their faces. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. The air grew thick and heavy. Suddenly, a pair of strong hands grasped Ben from behind. A firm voice barked commands. Ben, struggling to breathe, felt the world slipping away. Then, with a sickening lurch, the piece of steak dislodged. He drew in a ragged, desperate breath. Relief washed over him, leaving him weak and trembling.
Easy now, sir. Just take it slow. Let's get you to the medical facility.
The hero, a crew member with kind eyes and a reassuring presence, helped Ben to his feet. He insisted on escorting Ben to the ship's medical facility. Kimmy, still shaken, clung to Ben's hand, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and a growing unease. The pristine white walls of the ship's infirmary did little to calm Ben's nerves. The incident had left him shaken. A persistent cough lingered, a constant reminder of the close call. The ship's doctor, a stern woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, examined Ben with clinical precision. She prescribed him medication for the irritation and advised rest. However, her reassuring words did little to quell the unease that had settled over Ben.
You'll be fine, Mr. Ben. Just take these and rest. It's nothing serious.
The feeling was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. Back in their cabin, the luxurious suite felt stifling. Ben lay in bed, his chest tight. He tried to convince himself it was just the aftermath of the choking episode, but a cold dread seeped into his bones. The gentle rocking of the ship, once soothing, now felt like a threat. He noticed the subtle throbbing in his head, the way his skin seemed overly sensitive.
How are you feeling now, honey? You look different.
Kimmy, her face etched with worry, sat beside him. She tried to sound cheerful, but her voice trembled with a fear she couldn't quite disguise. Ben reached for her hand, seeking solace in her touch, but the fear, like a dark cloud, continued to loom large.
I'm okay, Kimmy. Just tired, I guess.
But deep down, they both knew something was terribly wrong.
Desperate to lift the oppressive mood, I convinced Ben I'd be right back. I needed a moment to collect myself.
The Alchemy Bar, with its dim lighting and intoxicating aromas, promised a temporary escape. Kimmy ordered a gin and tonic, her go-to drink, and leaned against the bar, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in her stomach. The clinking of glasses, the hushed conversations, the rhythmic sway of the ship, everything seemed surreal. She felt adrift in a sea of uncertainty, her husband's health a growing concern.
Don't worry, your husband won't be a problem for long.
I froze, my blood turning to ice. The man's words, laced with a chilling implication, hung in the air between us. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to make sense of his words. Was it a cruel joke, a misunderstanding, or something far more sinister?
Enjoy your drink, we'll meet again.
Then, just as abruptly as he had appeared, he vanished into the crowd. Kimmy sat there, paralyzed with fear, the man's words echoing in her ears. She glanced down at her drink, the ice clinking softly against the glass. A sudden wave of nausea washed over her. The cocktail, once so inviting, now seemed laced with something far more potent than gin and tonic. Had he tampered with her drink while she was distracted? The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through her. Her heart pounded in her chest. Her head spun. She needed to get back to Ben, to tell him what had happened. But her legs felt like lead. She could barely breathe. Kimmy stumbled away from the bar, her vision blurring at the edges. The ship, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, now felt like a gilded cage. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before her, the walls closing in. She gripped the handrail, her knuckles white with exertion. Each breath was a struggle, the air thick and heavy in her lungs. The world around her began to spin, the opulent decor of the ship swirling into a dizzying kaleidoscope of colors and shapes.
I have to reach Ben. I have to warn him.
Panic surged through her, threatening to consume her, but her legs buckled beneath her and she collapsed to the ground, the plush carpet doing little to cushion her fall. As darkness crept in from the edges of her vision, she could have sworn she heard the man's voice, a low chuckle that seemed to come from the shadows themselves.
Sleep well?
Back in their cabin, Ben tossed and turned, his unease growing with each passing moment. The silence was deafening, broken only by the creaking of the ship and the steady thrumming of the engines. He reached for Kimmy, his hand meeting only the cold emptiness of the sheets. Panic surged through him, a cold fist squeezing at his heart. Where was she?
Kimmy, where are you?
He fumbled for his phone, his hands trembling. He called her name, his voice hoarse with fear, but there was no answer. He tried her cell, but it went straight to voicemail. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and he clutched at the bedside table, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that something was terribly wrong.
I have to find Kimmy. I have to find her before it's too late.
He stumbled out of bed, ignoring the throbbing in his head and the way the room seemed to tilt precariously beneath his feet. He had to reach her, he had to warn her, but what if he was already too late?